I stood in my kitchen, staring at the stack of unopened mail, hands shaking so badly I couldn't grip the envelopes. One of them bore a red stamp, urgent, and inside was documentation that would change everything I thought I knew about myself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand who I was before this moment, before the girl with the backpack and the desperate eyes, before I made the decision that would unravel my entire life. My name is Michael Harrison, and 3 months ago, I had everything figured out. At least, I thought I did. I'd spent 15 years building a software consulting business from my garage in suburban Portland, Oregon. Started small, just me and a laptop, and grew it into a legitimate operation with 4 employees, a real office on Morrison Street, and enough recurring contracts to sleep at night without anxiety eating me alive. My wife, Jennifer, used to joke that I loved my business more than her. She wasn't entirely wrong back then, but I'd been working on that. Really working on it. Our house sat on a quiet street in the West Hills neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a detached garage I'd converted into a home gym. The mortgage was manageable, $4,200 a month, and we'd paid it on time every single month for 12 years. The neighborhood was solid. HOA fees were reasonable. We had neighbors who actually waved in the morning, not the kind who pretended you didn't exist. Mrs. Chen next door brought us homemade dumplings at Christmas. Real dumplings, not store-bought garbage. Jennifer worked as a dental hygienist at a practice downtown. She'd wake up at 6, shower while I made coffee, and we'd sit together for maybe 20 minutes before her day started. We weren't some romance novel couple anymore. We'd been married for 14 years, but we had a rhythm, a comfortable thing. She'd kiss me on the cheek before heading out, sometimes smack me on the ass and tell me to try not to break the internet today. I'd laugh. We still laughed. Our credit score was 781. Not exceptional, but solid. I had a 401k with about $380,000 in it. Jennifer had her own retirement savings. We took a vacation every summer, 2 weeks, usually somewhere on the coast. Last year, we'd rented a beach house in Cannon Beach, drank wine on the deck, made love in the afternoons when the rain came. Jennifer bought a watercolor painting of the lighthouse and hung it in our bedroom. Life was the kind of thing people dream about when they're younger. Not mansion wealth, not yacht money, but genuine stability. The kind where you can afford to fix the water heater when it breaks without panic. Where you can buy the organic vegetables at New Seasons Market without checking prices first. Where you sleep through the night because there's nothing keeping you awake. I was 43 years old. Jennifer was 41. We'd talked about kids early on, but we'd been honest. Neither of us really wanted them. Our friends with children always looked exhausted. We had freedom instead. We had each other, our careers, our house, our Saturday morning farmers market routine. We had the life that made other people jealous. Everything felt intentional. Earned. Mine. It was a Tuesday evening in late September when the first thing went wrong. I was closing up the office, just me and the glow of my monitor at 7 p.m., which had become routine, when my business partner and best friend of 23 years, Brandon, texted me. Brandon had been with me since the beginning. He'd invested his own money into the business in year 2 when we needed capital for servers, and he'd never asked me to buy him out. We'd been friends since college, groomsmen in each other's weddings. The text read, "Hey man, can we talk tomorrow morning before the team gets in? Nothing urgent, just some stuff I want to discuss." That's how these things start, isn't it? Not with a bang, but with a vague request for a conversation. Not urgent, just something. My stomach immediately tightened. I stared at the text for a full minute before responding, "Sure, 7:30 a.m., my office." "Perfect," he wrote back. I sat there another 20 minutes, not working, just staring at my computer screen. My therapist, yeah, I'd been seeing someone since Jennifer asked me to work on my anxiety about work-life balance, would have told me that catastrophizing wasn't helpful, that I was projecting worst-case scenarios onto ambiguity. I knew that. I knew better. But knowing and doing are different things. Jennifer was already asleep when I got home at 9. She'd left a plate of lasagna warming in the oven with a post-it note. Eat something. Love you. I ate standing up at the kitchen counter, barely tasting it, wondering what Brandon needed to say that couldn't wait until the regular morning meeting. The next morning, I woke at 5 and couldn't fall back asleep. I got to the office by 7, made a fresh pot of coffee, and waited. Brandon arrived at 7:35, looking like he hadn't slept either. His usually clean-shaven face had dark stubble, and his eyes were red-rimmed. He was carrying a manila folder. "Thanks for making time," he said, closing the door behind him. "Of course. What's going on?" He sat down across from me and placed the folder on my desk. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just looked at me like he was trying to memorize my face before he destroyed it. "I'm getting out," he finally said. The words didn't land right the first time. "Out of what?" "The business. I'm leaving, Michael. I wanted to tell you in person before I submit the official notice. My brain couldn't process this." "You're what? Why?" "Is it money? Are you not happy? We can—" "It's not that simple," he said. He opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, dozens of them. "I've been having some personal issues, financial pressure, and I've been taking contracts on the side, outside clients, doing work that should have been hours." The room got very quiet. "How much?" I heard myself ask. "Over the past 2 years? About $80,000? $80,000. That number should have made me angry, should have made me want to throw him out. Instead, I felt something worse, a strange, hollow disappointment. Not because he'd stolen from the business, but because he'd lied to my face for 2 years. Because we'd shared lunch together, gone to each other's homes, laughed at the same jokes, and the whole time he was cutting deals in the dark. "I'm going to make restitution," Brandon said quietly. "I've already got a lawyer drawing up an agreement. I'll pay it back." I wasn't listening anymore. I was thinking about all the times he'd said he was busy, all the late nights I'd thought he was working on our projects, all the trust I'd placed in him without question, because that's what you do with people you've known since you were 22. "When are you leaving?" I asked. "I've got another job lined up. I start in November." November. That gave me 6 weeks to figure out how to keep the business running without him. 6 weeks to explain to our team that the guy who'd been their mentor was bailing. 6 weeks to absorb the financial hit and pretend like everything was fine. "Okay," I said. "We'll work out the details with our lawyers." He stood to leave, and that's when I should have felt the first real warning. That's when I should have recognized the pattern. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at those printed emails, thinking about how good we were at lying to each other. After Brandon left, I sat alone in my office for 2 hours without moving. I couldn't focus on work that day. Jennifer called around noon, asking if I wanted her to pick up something for dinner, and I almost told her everything right then. But I didn't. I lied and said I was fine, just tired. She said, "The usual. You're stressed about something and you're keeping it from me." I hated that she knew me that well. I hated that she was right. By 6 p.m., I was sitting in my car in the office parking lot, unable to drive home. The Portland rain was coming down hard, that cold October rain that soaks through your jacket. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, thinking about how much money the business would lose, thinking about explaining this to Jennifer, thinking about whether I could even trust anyone anymore. That's when I saw her. She was standing under the awning of the Vietnamese restaurant next door to my office building, completely soaked. Couldn't have been more than 18 or 19, wearing a black hoodie that looked like it had been through a war, jeans with holes in the knees, and a backpack held together with duct tape. She was shivering, watching the cars pass, not moving. Just standing there like she was waiting for something or someone. I don't know why I did it. Normally I'm the guy who doesn't get involved. I donate to charity, sure, I vote the right way. But I'm not the type who stops to help. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy trying to keep his own life together. But something about her, the way she was hugging herself, the desperation in how still she was, made me get out of my car. "Hey," I said, walking over. "Are you okay?" She looked up at me like I'd materialized from nowhere. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying, and her lips had that bluish tint that comes from being cold for too long. She didn't answer right away, just looked at me with this expression that was half fear, half hope. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice shook. "Just waiting for someone." "It's freezing," I said. "You've been standing here for like 20 minutes. I've been watching from my car." "I'm fine," she repeated. But she wasn't fine, not even close. I made a decision that I would later replay 1,000 times, wondering if I could have done anything differently. "Come on," I said. "At least wait inside. There's a coffee shop in the building. It's warm." She hesitated, and I saw her do the calculation. Is this guy dangerous? That I'm sure homeless people have to do constantly. After a moment, she nodded. Her name was Ashley. She was 19 years old, from Bend, Oregon originally, and she'd been living on the streets for almost a year. She'd run away from home when her stepdad started getting inappropriate, and she'd been bouncing between shelters and the streets ever since. She had a job interview at a restaurant supply company the next morning, her first real lead in months, but she'd missed her shelter's 9 p.m. curfew 3 days in a row, and they'd kicked her out. She was trying to make it another night, and then figure out what came next. We sat in the coffee shop for 2 hours. I ordered her the biggest sandwich they had, and a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream, like she was a kid, and she ate like she hadn't had a real meal in days. Probably hadn't. She told me her story in fragmented pieces, hesitant at first, then all at once, like someone opening a dam. She told me about her mom working night shifts and not believing her about her stepdad, about the foster care system that was supposed to protect her, but felt more like a warehouse, about sleeping in her car for 3 weeks before it broke down, and she had to abandon it. "The interview tomorrow is my shot," she said, wiping chocolate from her lip. "If I can get this job, I can get into a work-provided housing program. They've got a dorm for employees. If I can just get through one night, I can make it work." I listened, and I heard something in her voice that I recognized, desperation mixed with determination. The belief that if she could just get one break, she could fix everything. I knew that feeling. I'd felt it when I was starting my business, sleeping in my office, eating ramen, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. "You're going to get that job," I said. "You don't know that." "No, I don't. But you're going to try, and that's what matters." It was a stupid thing to say, the kind of motivational bullshit that sounds good, but doesn't change anything. Except then, I heard myself say something else. "You can stay at my house tonight. There's a guest room. You can shower, sleep in a real bed, wake up rested, and go to that interview tomorrow looking like you've got your life together. Because you do. You're doing it." I don't know why I said it. I really don't. Maybe it was guilt about Brandon, about feeling betrayed and helpless, and Ashley represented someone I could actually help. Maybe it was because I'd spent the last 6 hours feeling like my entire world was crumbling, and I needed to do something that made me feel like I had control over something. Maybe I was just a good person that day, and that's all there is to it. Ashley stared at me. "You don't even know me. I know you've got an interview tomorrow, and you need a place to sleep. That's enough. Your wife won't—" "My wife," I said, "will understand. Trust me." That was a gamble. Jennifer was kind, but she was also practical. She didn't like surprises. She liked things orderly and planned, but I was betting that she was also the kind of person who couldn't turn away someone in need. I was wrong about a lot of things that night, but I was right about that. When we got home, Jennifer was in the kitchen making tea. She looked up from her mug and saw me walk in with a soaking wet teenager, and her expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and then something that looked like understanding. I told her everything, right there, while Ashley stood dripping on our tile floor, looking like she wanted to disappear. To her enormous credit, Jennifer didn't yell. She didn't ask a million questions. She just looked at Ashley and said, "Let's get you dry. I think we have some clothes that might fit you." Ashley stayed that night. She showered for the first time in weeks, wearing clothes that didn't smell like rain and desperation. Jennifer made her a real breakfast in the morning, eggs and bacon, and toast with fresh squeezed orange juice. Ashley sat at our kitchen table like she couldn't quite believe it was real, eating slowly, carefully, like she was afraid it would be taken away. "You've got this," Jennifer said, handing her a thermos of coffee for the interview. "You're going to walk in there and you're going to be yourself, and they're going to be lucky to have you." Ashley left at 8:30 a.m. She came back at 1 p.m., and I could tell from her face before she even said anything. She'd gotten the job. Starting salary of $30,000 a year, benefits in 90 days, a spot in the employee housing starting next week. She was crying, but this time it was the good kind of crying, the kind where someone's entire life just changed. She stayed with us that night too, and the next, and the night after that. A week turned into 2 weeks. She started her job at the restaurant supply company, and every evening she'd come home and sit with Jennifer and me, talking about her day, about her coworkers, about the future that was suddenly possible. Jennifer bought her new clothes. I helped her open a bank account and showed her how to build credit. We became the parents that Ashley never had. It was exactly the kind of thing that makes you feel good about yourself. It was exactly the kind of situation where you can convince yourself that you're a good person, that your life has meaning beyond just accumulating money and stability. And then came the night when everything changed again. Ashley was in her room, our guest room that had become her room, when Jennifer came to find me in the kitchen. She was holding Ashley's backpack. Her expression was unreadable. "We need to talk," she said quietly, "and you need to see something." She pulled out a manila folder from inside the backpack. My stomach dropped. I'd seen a folder like this before, just a few days ago, when Brandon had destroyed my business. But this one was different. This one had my name on it. Inside were documents, photographs, bank statements, and at the very bottom, a handwritten letter that started with, "My name isn't Ashley. I need to tell you who I really am, because what I'm about to do is going to hurt you both, and you deserve to know why." My hands started shaking again. Jennifer was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, but something colder. Something like pity mixed with betrayal. "Michael," she said softly, "what did you do?" I stood there in my kitchen, staring at that handwritten letter with my name on it, and the world tilted sideways. Jennifer was waiting for an answer. "What did you do?" But I had no idea what I was supposed to have done. I reached for the letter with shaking hands. "I don't understand," I said. "What is this?" Jennifer pulled out the first photograph. It was me. Me, standing outside my office building, talking to Ashley the day I'd met her. Then another photo, me handing her cash at a coffee shop. Another, me opening my house door while she stood on the porch with that wet backpack. "These were taken by a private investigator," Jennifer said quietly. "Someone hired them to document your interactions with her." My brain couldn't make sense of this. "Who would—" "Keep reading," Jennifer said. I unfolded the handwritten letter. The handwriting was neat, careful, the handwriting of someone intelligent and deliberate. It began, "My name isn't Ashley. I'm Lauren Mitchell, and I'm Brandon's daughter." The words didn't compute. Brandon didn't have a daughter. Brandon was married to Derek. They'd been together for 12 years. They had 2 adopted sons, Michael and Christopher. I knew Brandon's life. I knew his kids' names. Unless he didn't. I kept reading. Lauren, the girl I'd known as Ashley, had been hired by Brandon 2 months ago, before he even told me he was leaving the business. She'd been instructed to gain my trust, to become part of my life, to document everything. The letter explained Brandon's real motivation for stealing $80,000. He needed it for legal fees. For a custody battle he'd been quietly waging against Derek for the past year. Derek had found out about Brandon's affairs, about the side business, about the fact that Brandon had been living a double life with a woman named Heather in Seattle while maintaining his marriage to Derek. Brandon wanted leverage. He wanted to prove that I, his business partner and best friend, was unstable, reckless, susceptible to manipulation. He wanted evidence that could be used to paint Derek as the one who'd chosen to stay in a marriage with a man whose own best friend couldn't trust him, and he'd used his own daughter to do it. The letter continued. I didn't know what I was helping him do at first. He told me you were a dangerous man, that he needed evidence to protect himself from you. But when I got to know you and Jennifer, I realized he'd lied. About everything. You two are good people. You helped me when you didn't have to, and I can't be part of this anymore. At the bottom of the letter was Brandon's contact information for the investigator, and a note. I'm keeping copies of everything. I'm going to the police. I'm sorry. Jennifer was watching me read, her arms crossed, her face a mask of controlled fury. When did you get this? I asked. Tonight, while you were in the shower. I found it in her room when I was putting away some laundry. Where is she now? Gone. I told her to leave. She tried to explain, but Michael... Jennifer's voice cracked. She was helping her father set us up. She was in our house, eating our food, sleeping in our guest room, lying to our faces. I felt something break inside me. Not my faith in people, that was already shattered by Brandon, but something more fundamental. The belief that kindness was safe. The belief that if you did the right thing, the universe wouldn't find a way to punish you for it. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Not my business lawyer, my personal attorney, a woman named Carol Chen, who'd handled our home purchase and our wills. I told her everything. The theft, the private investigator, the planted daughter, all of it. Do you have the letter? Carol asked. Yeah, the original. Don't let anyone else touch it. I'm going to need to see it, and we'll want it photographed for documentation. This is criminal, Michael. What Brandon did, the fraud, the conspiracy to commit fraud, potentially extortion. These are serious charges. I made a police report that afternoon. The detective who took it was a woman named Officer Sarah Martinez, and she listened to the entire story without expression. When I finished, she said, This is going to be complicated. We need to verify who this Lauren Mitchell is, confirm she's Brandon's daughter, establish the timeline. But based on what you're telling me, yes, this looks like criminal conspiracy. The charges came through 2 weeks later. Brandon was arrested at his new job, handcuffed in front of his entire team, and led out of the building. The story made the Portland Business Journal within hours. Local software consultant arrested for fraud and conspiracy. My phone started ringing. Clients called asking if the business was stable. Employees called asking if their jobs were safe. My mother called from Phoenix asking if I was okay, if I needed her to fly out. I told her yes to all of it, and no, I couldn't really talk about it. Derek called me. He was crying. He said, I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know any of this. He told me he was working late, and he was with someone else. He was with Heather. I filed for divorce last week. I know, I said. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. He's the one who should be sorry. But Brandon didn't seem particularly sorry. According to his lawyer, he was claiming that he'd been under psychological distress due to his failing marriage, that the money was a loan he'd intended to repay, that he'd hired the investigator to protect himself from what he believed was my plan to force him out of the business. It was a lie on top of lies on top of lies. The trial was set for March. In the meantime, I had to rebuild the business. I promoted one of my senior developers to Brandon's position. I brought in a consultant to audit our operations and make sure there weren't any other hidden financial problems. I spent 18-hour days at the office trying to salvage the contracts and the reputation that Brandon had damaged. Jennifer and I went to couples therapy, not because our relationship was broken, but because we needed to talk about what had happened in a safe space. We needed to process the violation of having someone in our home under false pretenses. We needed to rebuild trust, not in each other, but in our ability to navigate the world together. 3 months after Brandon's arrest, Lauren reached out. She sent an email to my work address, knowing Jennifer would never let her contact us at home. In the email, she apologized. She said she was in therapy, working through her relationship with her father, trying to understand how she'd let him manipulate her into hurting innocent people. She said she'd testified to the police. She said she was sorry and she knew that wasn't enough, but she needed me to know that what she'd experienced in my home, the kindness, the stability, the feeling of being part of a family, had changed her. She'd enrolled in community college. She was working 2 jobs. She was trying to build a life that wasn't defined by her father's lies. I didn't respond. Jennifer said I shouldn't. She was right. The trial lasted 4 days. Brandon's lawyer did everything they could. Character witnesses, psychological evaluations, claims of temporary insanity. None of it mattered. The evidence was overwhelming. The investigator testified about Brandon's detailed instructions. Lauren testified, her voice steady, about how her father had coached her on what to say, what to do, how to gain my trust. The bank records showed the transfers. The emails showed the planning. The judge found Brandon guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, and attempted extortion. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 months. When the verdict was read, I felt nothing. Not relief, not satisfaction, not closure. Just a kind of numb exhaustion. Justice had been served, but it didn't change anything. My business partner of 23 years was going to prison. My trust had been weaponized. The world had proven itself to be exactly as unsafe as I'd always feared. Jennifer took my hand as we left the courthouse. She didn't say anything. We just walked to the car together, got in, and drove home. That night, we sat on our deck, looking out at the Portland lights, and Jennifer said, "We survived." "We did," I agreed. "Do you regret helping her?" "Lauren?" I thought about this. I thought about the girl, because that's what she was, regardless of her father's manipulation, sitting at our kitchen table, believing that her life had changed forever. I thought about the look on her face when she realized that her father had betrayed her, the same way he'd betrayed me. "No," I said. "I don't regret. I regret that she was put in that position. I regret that Brandon is her father, but I don't regret showing her kindness. That was real, even if everything else was a lie." Jennifer leaned her head on my shoulder. "You're a better person than I am." "That's not true." "It is. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt." "So am I said. "But I don't want to be the kind of person who stops helping people because I got hurt once. I don't want Brandon to take that from me." It took another year for things to feel normal again. The business recovered. Better, actually, because I'd had to rebuild it from scratch, and I'd done it better the first time. My credit score stayed solid. My 401k recovered. The lighthouse painting still hung in our bedroom, a reminder of simpler times. I never heard from Brandon again. He's 6 months into his sentence now. Sometimes I wonder what he's thinking, locked in a cell, knowing that the only person who cared enough to try to help him was the person he'd betrayed. But mostly, I don't think about him at all. I think about the life Jennifer and I rebuilt. I think about the fact that we're still here, still together, still finding ways to show kindness to people, even after we've been hurt. I learned something in all of this, something that took me a long time to understand. Betrayal doesn't define the person who betrays you. It defines what kind of person you choose to be after it happens. And I chose to keep going.